Imagine, tonight, you step out, cool air, the sky was clear, you look up, then he suddenly stopped dead in his tracks. Right next to it is a giant blue sphere. Initial, you think you're seeing things. But just a few seconds later, the neighbors also stepped in. And then the whole street. Everyone was. Nobody knows. What is that thing? But everyone agrees. It's incredibly beautiful. In just a few hours, images of the blue sphere have appeared all over the internet. Some people call it the second moon. Some people believe that this is the most spectacular astronomical phenomenon. The whole world, it seems like everything stopped to gaze at the sky. But, Trong Ki Hang Tai Noi Kondang Tramtro, at observatories around the world, no one smiled anymore. Giant telescopes, they all turned their attention towards the mysterious object. The first calculations makes the whole apartment, because Thursday, not a house, it's not a comet, but it is Uranus, and even more terrifying, it's small.
While billions of people were still staring at the beautiful blue planet, the world's observatories never stopped working. Hundreds of giant telescopes locked onto the same target, Uranus. At first, the news wasn't all bad. The earliest calculations suggested that Uranus would need more than 10 years to reach Earth's orbit. 10 years, enough time to prepare, enough time to find a solution. At least, that's what everyone hoped. But then, everything changed. Overnight, something no one could explain pushed Uranus forward. The giant ice planet suddenly accelerated to nearly 1,000 kilometers every second. The numbers didn't make sense. Scientists assumed the computers had made a mistake, so they ran the calculations again. Once, twice, 5 times, 10 times. Every simulation produced exactly the same result. The room fell silent. No one spoke, no one moved. Then, a single number appeared on every screen. 30 days, not 30 years, not 30 months, just 30 days. That was all the time humanity had left. The news was immediately sent to governments, space agencies, military command centers, emergency response teams, but it was never announced to the public because there was no evacuation plan. No spaceship could carry 8 billion people away from Earth. Outside those control rooms, life continued as normal. People went to work, children laughed on their way to school, traffic filled the streets, coffee shops opened every morning. No one realized that an invisible countdown had already begun. Then, the following night, you looked up at the sky again, and something felt different. Uranus was noticeably larger, not by much, but enough for your eyes to notice. Night after night, it kept growing, slowly, silently, relentlessly. By the end of the week, it was almost the same size as the moon. Its cold blue light covered cities, rivers, mountains, and oceans. It was breathtaking, but deep down, everyone could feel something was terribly wrong, and the world.
To reach Earth, Uranus couldn't travel through empty space. It had to cross the asteroid belt, a vast region filled with millions of rocky bodies that had followed stable orbits for billions of years. Until now, the immense gravity of Uranus began pulling those asteroids. At first, only a few changed direction, then hundreds, then thousands. The asteroid belt turned into a massive storm of rock, and Earth was directly in its path. The following night, you looked up at the sky. Brilliant streaks of light shot across the darkness. People stopped their cars. Families gathered outside. Phones pointed toward the sky. Everyone thought they were witnessing the greatest meteor shower in human history, but they were wrong. Those weren't harmless meteors. They were giant asteroids. The first was the size of an entire city. The second was even larger. The third had enough energy to erase an entire nation. One by one, they raced toward Earth. Then, the first asteroid struck the ocean. For a brief moment, everything went silent. Then, the sea exploded. A towering column of water shot kilometers into the sky. Moments later, a gigantic tsunami began racing toward the coast. And that was only the beginning.
The asteroid strikes were only the beginning, because now, the greatest threat wasn't falling from the sky. It was rising from beneath your feet. As Uranus drew closer, its enormous gravity began pulling on Earth itself. Not enough to rip the planet apart. Not yet, but enough to disrupt the delicate balance that had kept our world stable for billions of years. At first, almost no one noticed. A glass of water started to tremble, hanging lights swayed back and forth, windows rattled. Most people assumed it was just another earthquake. They couldn't have been more wrong. Within hours, the shaking spread across the planet. Roads cracked open, bridges collapsed, skyscrapers rocked so violently that some folded in on themselves. Power grids failed, communication networks went silent, emergency sirens echoed. In every major city, people rushed into the streets. But there was nowhere safe to go. Deep below the surface, Earth's tectonic plates were grinding against each other with unimaginable force. Then, the crust began to split. Gigantic cracks stretched for hundreds of kilometers. From those glowing wounds, molten rock burst toward the surface. One volcano erupted, then another, then hundreds. Dormant volcanoes that had slept for thousands of years awakened all at once. Ash blasted into the atmosphere. Lava poured across forests, highways, and entire cities. The sky turned black, sunlight disappeared, day became night. Then came the oceans. Uranus pulled on Earth's seas. Like an invisible giant, the tides kept rising. 10 meters, 50 meters, 100 meters. Walls of water swept across coastlines. Entire cities disappeared beneath the waves. Ships were tossed inland, like children's toys. No nation escaped, no place remained untouched. In just a matter of days, Earth was no longer the home we once knew. And as humanity struggled to survive, a new danger was already beginning. The air itself was about to change.
Days passed, and Uranus kept getting closer. It was no longer just a bright blue dot. It now dominated the sky. From horizon to horizon, the giant ice planet looked larger than anyone could have imagined. Its pale blue clouds slowly drifted across its surface. Its faint rings became visible to the naked eye. And then, something even more incredible appeared. 27 moons, one by one, tiny lights emerged around Uranus. Soon, all 27 moons were visible from Earth. Some glowed brightly, others appeared only as faint shadows. Together, they looked like a miniature solar system, hanging above our world. For a brief moment, people forgot about the danger. Families gathered outside, phones pointed toward the sky. Millions watched in complete silence, as the most breathtaking sight in human history unfolded above them. But beauty can be deceptive. Every passing hour, Uranus grew larger, its gravity grew stronger, the tides became more violent, the ground shook without warning. Scientists didn't need another calculation. They already knew the truth. There was no longer any chance of stopping it. The collision was now inevitable. The moment had finally arrived. There was nowhere left to hide. No technology, no underground bunker, no rocket could save humanity now. Uranus filled nearly half the sky. Its blue clouds stretched from one horizon to the other. Then, it happened. The first touch. Not an explosion, not a flash of light. Just a force beyond anything our planet had ever experienced. The ground lurched violently, mountains collapsed, entire continents shifted in seconds. The atmosphere was torn apart by supersonic shockwaves. Winds reached thousands of kilometers per hour. Everything still standing was swept away. Then, the oceans rose, not as waves, but as entire seas, lifted into the sky. Water, rock, steel, and cities were thrown into space. The collision released more energy than billions of nuclear bombs, detonating at the same instant. Earth's crust shattered, its mantle burst open, rivers of molten rock covered the surface. Within minutes, the blue planet, that had been home to every human in history, was gone. But the story didn't end there. Over millions of years, the debris from Earth began circling Uranus. Tiny fragments collided with one another. Slowly, gravity pulled them together. Piece by piece, a new world started to form. Perhaps, life would return one day. Not the same life, not the same oceans, not the same civilizations, but somewhere, far in the future, Another species might look up at its sky, wonder where it came from, and never realize that it was living on the remains of a forgotten Earth. So, if Uranus really crashed into our planet, humanity would almost certainly disappear. But in the universe, even the end of one world can become the beginning